Hey, great day, everybody. Welcome to another incredible episode of Seeds of Abundance. I'm Matthew Britt coming at you from Ottawa, Ontario. Very excited to be here, and we have a phenomenal guest with us today. Unfortunately, Jim is doing some traveling. We're doing our Origins Reclaimed launch this coming Sunday, the 27th of April. So I feel like by the time people see this, this event will already have happened, but so he wasn't able to join us today because he's on an airplane. But we do have a great guest with us today, former Canadian. Well, I guess still kind of attached to Canada, but has moved her life to a tropical destination. I'll let her fill you in on that. But Jackie Mirkopoulos, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome. And you're the founder, CEO of Seven Neighbours. So before we dive into that, why don't you just first tell everybody a little bit about yourself, maybe some of your history, and we'll
Yeah,
kick it off from there.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And happy travels to Jim for an amazing event. So we'll miss him today, but he's doing some epic things. So we'll send him all the good vibes for that. So a bit of my story, my background. So I born and raised in Ontario, in Aurora, Ontario, just north of Toronto. Grew up my whole life there. Parents, mother's from Sudbury, Northern Ontario, the big nickel. And
Hmm.
my dad is of Greek descent, so he came over from a little village in the northern mountains of Greece, and they met at university, and have always been big entrepreneurs and philanthropists, and that kind of seeped through to me and my sister. And so that's been a big part of our journey, is just the drive and the grind and the entrepreneurial mindset, which had me right out of university open my clinical practice. So my background is in massage therapy and fascial stretch therapy. So I had a clinical practice in downtown Toronto for 14 years, and taught also for an institute called the Stretch to Win Institute, which is a fascial stretch
Oh
therapy
yeah.
specialist school. And so I did most of, the early parts of my career were very much in the body world and personal training and just rehabilitation and getting human bodies functioning at their best, and athletes and all of that. And pretty much after like having that clinic for 14 years, I started to travel more. I made my way down to Costa Rica, which I absolutely fell in love with. And I was like, how do I make it down to this beautiful country more and more? So I started traveling about, one or two times a year. I then quickly was like, how do I become a snowbird without retiring? Because this whole,
Yeah.
being down south in the winter and then coming up north again seemed like the ideal situation for me. So I, with my entrepreneurial mindset, I was trying to figure out how I could make that happen, and met the right people, right place, right time. And so I started spending a lot of my winters still while running my clinical practice down in Costa Rica, and working with some people down in Manuel Antonio at a wellness center there. So still in the same realm of health and wellness.
Hmm.
And I even popped my table open up on the beach during low tide. I had a surfer friend there that he's like, you can just store your table with my boards and it'll be great. And I was like, this sounds like it would be great. Let's do that. So I worked part time, popping my table open up on the beach, surfing in high tide, doing massages low tide. Worked a little bit also at that wellness center, did a little bit of both, and I was like, this is really, this beats being in a concrete building in Toronto, that's for sure. So I did it for
Yes.
about 5 or 6 years. I did that, and then I'll never forget the coming back the winter. It was, the last winter, if you will, that I did it in that format. I was there for 4 months straight. And I came back to my condo in Toronto, and I sat out on my terrace with all this concrete around me, and my body just started to like short circuit, is the best way that I can describe it. And I just got this download that like I'm not supposed to be here anymore. This is not where I'm really meant to thrive and live out my purpose. So immediately I called my real estate agent. I was like, we got to sell this. And she's like, what? Like I had this like amazing condo downtown with this beautiful terrace. She's like, you're ridiculous. I said, no, like put it on the market tomorrow. Like I'm complete. Let's
Wow.
make this happen. So next thing I know, I'm selling my condo, putting my stuff in storage. Was gonna go down for the winter. I had bought a place in Costa Rica. I was gonna come back to Ontario in the spring. When the real estate market's hot again, find a new place closer to my family. So I closed my clinical practice. I sold my condo. Everything's in storage. I go down for the winter to my beautiful new property that I bought. And then the pandemic happens. And I was like, well, I really set myself up really good, you know?
Yep.
And I want to thank my body for that, because she's the one that gave me these messages. And, you know, I really accredit me listening and tuning into that from my background in health and wellness and the body work. Is like, I was so in touch with my body and the different messages that it was giving me and how it would be affected in different environments, that it was like a no-brainer. And then cut to when the world shuts down and I'm in Costa Rica, I was just like, okay, like there's something to this body awareness and this conversation and listening and tuning in to those intuitive hits, because they definitely guided me to like the most perfect scenario. Because while most were like isolated and in concrete boxes for the pandemic, I was literally in Costa Rica with friends in community, because I was running a co-work retreat when the world shut down. And two of my friends said, okay, we got to go back. The other ones were like, we'll wait it out 2 weeks. Like, no big deal. 2 weeks quickly turned into 6 months of us co-living together. There was 6 of us. And so I was in community, literally in nature school. So I had a very different pandemic experience than most. And, originally I had bought my property to run retreats and wellness retreats and all of that. Then when the world shut down and no one was traveling, I was like, okay, well, now what do I do? And this is where enter permaculture. Me and 2 of the other friends that I was living with at the time were like, what are we going to do? Like, I'm like, I have all this land now. I guess I should find something to help me learn how to steward it, And lo and behold, thank you, Instagram algorithm, boom, this like Ecoversity permaculture course pops up on my feed. And 3 of us ended up taking it. So we were like, when I say I was in nature school, like I literally was in nature school.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and that permaculture course was like the catalyst to completely shifting my perspective on everything. And that's where 7 Neighbours was then born from, and a few other projects that I'm, working on now. So that's kind of like, in a nutshell, the little rundown of my background and how it led me to Costa Rica and how it led me to permaculture, and now permaculture being this huge catalyst that opened up so many other possibilities and opportunities.
Yeah, and one thing that stood out for me and all of that really powerfully is being in tune with your body and your emotional guidance system, because that's something that our children are really innately born with, but they lose touch with it, like all of us. And unfortunately, because of that, we miss all kinds of opportunities. Right? We don't trust the gut. So being well aware of that, being in tune with your body, obviously has a lot to do with the background in athletics and helping other people, working in the massage therapy, helping people level up their own energy in their own life through movement, stretching. And by the way, I used to be in the personal training world and did that Stretch to Win course as well. So
amazing.
Love working with the fascia and helping people really loosen up by changing that. So paying attention to that is something really important for people. So for yourself, what really made you go from the health and wellness to I'm going to be now health and wellness caring for nature? Like, what was that big spark that made that shift?
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it's, I get this question often. To me, it's an obvious one, because we are nature, like if we think about ourselves and the human body and how we're made up, like there's so many mirrors of that we see in nature.
Yeah.
And, being in permaculture really made that connection for me, because, if we think about the fascial nets and the webs and just even how our like nervous system and our circulatory system, like all of this way that we're wired and that we're built, like you see these patterns in nature, you see these operating systems in nature. So there was such a connection point that was easy for me to make with the background that I had in the health and wellness and the extensive knowledge on anatomy and so on and so forth. But then in permaculture, the course, so principle number 1, observation. So one of our first pieces of homework that they gave us was go and observe nature. And we were like, okay, we got all the time in the world to just sit and observe, right? Nothing else is happening. So I'm sitting there and I'm observing. And in that homework, such simple observation is when I started to see such an obvious connection where nature doesn't make mistakes. She doesn't apologize. She doesn't like wait for things. Like she is such this beautiful symbiotic ecosystem of death and rebirth that to me it was like this is how we're built as humans. We also like we are nature. We are also not a mistake. Nothing about how we're built is a mistake or a problem. A big part of my health and wellness background working with clients was really getting them to like be in collaboration with your body. Our body is literally like your best ride or die, literally ride or die best friend. And so many people feel victim to things that their body is telling them, whether it's chronic pain or some kind of disease or something. They automatically want to mask it or avoid it or like shy away from it, where like there's information there, there's opportunity there. And if we can collaborate together, we then can achieve results. So that kind of thought process and methodology that I was already practicing in, the health and wellness and like the human body game was then so obvious in how nature operates. And then our connection with nature, like, so by observing nature, our body, awareness, right? Like principle number one, observation. Principle number one for body connection, observe and be aware. Once we can get past that first step, and choose to lean into collaboration, we are now working in harmony with our bodies. We are now working in harmony with nature. And now we are in a constant loop of reciprocity. And so for me, it was like a no-brainer of switching from working with human beings to working with nature, because to me, they are one and the same. And I'm really trying to educate people on seeing how that is the case and getting them, I have a course called Anatomy Awareness that was my like human body owner's manual for people. Because, you buy a microwave, you get an owner's manual. You buy a TV, you get an owner's manual. You buy a phone, you get an owner's manual. Like none of us were born into this world with like, here's your human owner's manual, like all the best. No. So it's like, if we all had this like very fundamental owner's manual of like, what's our structural system? What's our fascial system? How does our nervous system work? How does our cyclical, system work? How does our energetic body work? Then we are now in full collaboration. So it's really about awareness, observation, education, and there's so much power in that. So for me, it was like such a clear like Lego block link of like, these are one and the same. Why are we not taking more of these natural operating systems in nature and process it and like weaving that more into our lives and weaving it into business and weaving it into organization and culture and like all of that? It's like, it was so clear to me once I sat and really started observing her. So that for me was like the click moment to be able to be like, no, like this, it's actually not that different.
Beautiful.
It's very similar. Yeah.
One of the major things that's happened to our society is the disconnection. We're acting like we are separate from nature. And you're so right. We are nature. We're not separate. We are part of it. And having that foresight to start inspiring others to recognize that and reconnect with that is so well timed. Like it's of great importance right now. I think part of why our society and the division we're experiencing is because of that disconnection with nature, right? We operate like we can just take from it. It doesn't matter what we do. Let's put everybody into a concrete box in the city, right? Surrounded by no nature at all. And then people aren't happy. And we wonder why.
Yeah.
But if they get back outside, if they start realizing that they are part of nature, they, first of all, fundamentally will behave different as part of. But two, it brings them back to a state of harmony and peace. And it's one of the best things you could do to eliminate stress, right? You see, when prisoners get involved in growing food, their recidivism rates plummet.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? Well, they've now been able to love something again, care for something, steward that, and it makes such a massive difference.
Yeah.
Well done on seeing that and, really nailing down the comparison and the fundamental easy switch over. That's phenomenal. So now that you've been doing permaculture and have built 7 Neighbours, what stuff to you really lights you up?
Yeah. So for me right now, I mean, obviously anything to do with the human body lights me up. As you can see,
Yeah.
my fascial net posters are still like, years later, I still have them up because I still reference them all the time. So definitely the human body lights me up still to this day, even though I'm not like, physically like in that practice of working with bodies. I'm very
Hmm.
much in the practice of empowering leaders to have this ride or die, like communicative, collaborative relationship with their bodies. So one thing that really lights me up, taking from permaculture and how do we because for me, like you said, it's an obvious connection for me. That's not the case for everyone. It's not as obvious. So it's been interesting for me to try and see what's the right communication to get other people to see that. And for me, it's now when I'm working with leaders and executives and teams, it's like, okay, there's just like in permaculture, there's the different zones. You have your zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, right? Like I've started to talk about this in terms of zones of leadership. So
Hmm.
as a leader, there's a human being behind the leadership. So that's kind of piece one is I get really excited and lit up about getting people to reconnect with the human being behind the leader. Because when you can be more grounded, be more connected to nature, be more aware of how this vessel works and operates, you are now way more in a better position to make decisions, to collaborate, to have discernment. Like there's a direct correlation with your relationship with your body and your wellness to how you're showing up in the boardroom and the decisions that you're making
For
and how you're
sure.
actually able to lead, whether it's in the boardroom or whether at home, right? Leadership can show up everywhere. It can show up in the
Hmm.
office, shows up in your family, it shows up in our personal life, like each individual leader. So I
Hmm.
really get excited about getting people to understand that it's so much more than just like going out and going to your cycling class or going to making sure you do your yoga before your meetings and stuff. No, this is about a deep understanding and connection of the human vessel and the human being behind the leadership. And then from there, I then get really lit up again, pulling from, permaculture and regenerative practices is just as much as we, want to tend to the soil. Um, out in the farmlands, like moving from conventional farming to regenerative agriculture and just like the benefits that is available with regenerative agriculture and tending and remediating soil for so many different reasons. We also need to tend to the soil of organizations. What's one of the biggest issues right now in our world is that we lost connection, greed is overtaking collaboration, competition, separation, and organizations. Like if you talk 9 people out of 10 are experiencing burnout, right? So and this is we're not operating the way that we ideally should be
Yeah.
operating. So how can we take concepts of tending to soil and bring that into organizational structure? So now beyond me taking care of the human being behind my individual leadership is how can I tend to the soil of my organization, my business, my company, my people? And this is where company culture comes in. Because company culture is literally, to me, the soil of a business. It can either be depleted and full of toxicity or a really bad bacterial kind of infestation, or it can be super diverse, healthy, the ability to compost, and the ability to become fertile ground for all productivity goals, to opportunities to be catapulted off of.
Mm.
So my biggest passion right now is getting organizations to see this and to see that by caring for the human beings and giving a lot of tending to your company culture, you will by default start to see an increase in profit, because that's the first question that I get with organizations. Okay, well, this is a great concept, but what does this mean? How am I going to make more money? Because at the end of the day, money makes the world go round.
Yeah.
Money is not a problem. I'm not against money. It's a great tool. It's a great resource. But how can we get people to understand that you don't have to make money by sacrificing and compromising people and the planet, that you can still make abundant profit while not sacrificing and compromising, while actually being in collaboration with nature and the planet, while actually being in collaboration and nourishing your people and the people that are driving the business forward. And so that's what I'm really lit up about, is getting the human beings to reconnect to the fertility that can come from diversity, speaking up, creating psychological safety in a boardroom, making sure that they have what I like to call compost structures, because conflict is inevitable. Like conflict is another thing that lights me up. People shy away from conflict. I get lit up by conflict because I'm like, this is an opportunity for innovation. Conflict is where innovation stems from. So how can we teach people to not shy away from mistakes, to not shy away from conflict and keep pushing it under the carpet, but looking at it as an opportunity, like let's roll up our sleeves and let's churn this compost pile because there's some good shit waiting to be fertilized, literally.
Yeah.
So it's like this concept of like being comfortable. Like if you stick with the stink, right? Compost sometimes goes through a little stinky process first before it becomes fertile. But how do we accept all of these things and not make them wrong? Nature doesn't make them wrong. She actually relies on composting processes and things dying and decomposing to be able to reconstruct. So those are some of the things that really light me up when I'm kind of harmonizing the human being with company culture, with organizations, making sure that businesses are still, able to gain profit, but again, without sacrificing and compromising people and the planet. And it's possible.
Absolutely is. I really like how you've taken the business side of leadership and organizations, but tied it into permaculture thinking, right? Taking what you've learned in the permaculture space, your experience through business, and combining those two to help companies and their individuals in those companies be better leaders. It's a very unique approach that I have never heard. So I really like that you've identified that niche for yourself and been able to pull the two things you're very passionate about into a beautiful mix that is now leveling up people at a time when I believe we really need some serious leadership. People got to step back into their power and take leadership roles, right? And start driving towards bringing that abundance back.
Yeah.
Because abundance is everywhere, right? You've already said it. Nature doesn't make mistakes. Nature is abundant. It's naturally abundant. We don't have to do anything other than steward it, be great stewards of the land and care for it and operate as part of. But there's no money in abundance, right? So that's always one of the interesting struggles for most, not everybody, but because there's no money in abundance, they try to control it so that they can put scarcity at the forefront. So then there's money there, right? And I really believe, and based on what you do, I'm sure you do as well, that we're at a really a precipice right now where, we kind of have two directions that things can potentially go. And the one that I like the best is the one where it's an abundant future. We've got all of our basic, our food, our energy, water, shelter. Those needs are all met because we have the abundance to provide all of those for everybody. No one should go without. And then from there, it gives us the freedom to really get back into nature, reconnect, build community, bring more love into the world, right? Care for one another in a different way, collaborate instead of compete. And,
Yeah.
it's a utopic type of fantasy, but I believe it's possible. And I'm sure
I
you,
don't think it's a fantasy. I think it's actually a reality that's here available for us right now. And
yeah.
it's just about choosing to lean into that. You know what I mean? To lean into that. So some might think it's a fantasy, but
Hmm.
fantasy seems so far away. I think it's closer than most might think.
I
I,
would
I,
agree.
I don't think I know that it's closer.
I
Um,
definitely agree.
that some might think. And, when we talk about abundance and money and all of that, there's like a universal law, there's universal energetics. And I know sometimes it might be a concept for some to really have a hard time wrapping their head around because it's not necessarily tangible that you can touch or feel or always explain. But there is universal law, like quantum physics explains a lot of this. And so when we start to think about abundance and its relationship with money and stuff like that, like I also don't feel the route is scarcity. I feel the route is the more you collaborate with nature, the more the universe will gift you with abundance in all of its
Hmm.
forms, whether it's food, whether it's energy, or whether it's actually like cash in your pocket. Like it's like there's such a realm of possibility there, but it truly, in my experience, will amplify when you're operating at that same frequency.
Yes.
When we resonate, there's a reason we were talking about before how you're saying, like with the prisoners who start gardening and what happens with them, or even just like with children, or even just here, like, why do we all feel better when we go to nature? Like,
Right.
why? Like there's a science behind that. There's a frequency that that nature resonates at. We can even start leaning into like the Schumann resonance and looking at that research. Like there is a frequency there, and so that same frequency, if you're trying to operate and get a result, but the way that you're trying to get to that result is in a frequency that doesn't match the results you're trying to achieve, like you won't get there.
Yeah.
Period. The end. But if you can change your frequency and really think about like, how do I match the energetics of what I'm trying to achieve? And a perfect example of this is my fruit trees. I'm going to bring permaculture in again because I learned so much when I'm out on my land. When I, planted my fruit trees, I made a point to learn how to prune. Like I was like, these are my children. I will take care of them. Like I had one incident where one of my land workers came and just like beheaded one of my soursop trees with a machete, not in the waning moon. There was a beautiful fruit and I was like, what are you doing? And then the next day the branch with the fruit on cracked off, the tree died. And so from that day forward, I was like, no one is allowed to touch my fruit trees. Like they need to be handled with much more care. And so me and a friend of mine, she comes down every year. We're actually doing a pruning retreat this December. So if anyone wants to keep in the loop on that, we're going to be doing a pruning retreat because there's too many trees now for just two of us to handle them. Yeah. But basically in this relationship, like I planted these trees when they were like 2 years old, like just like little babies, like maybe like not even a meter high. And every year I prune them. And, every day I walk my land and I speak to them and I am in a relationship with them. Cut 2, 3, 5 years later, and I have a bunch of fruit just bleeding off my trees. I have neighbors that are in a similar geographical area and they come, they're like, well, my lime tree doesn't have limes. Well, my thing doesn't have, like, mine doesn't have that. Why do you, like, who's taking care of yours? I want your landscaper. Like they start to get frustrated and then like, I want what you have, but mine, I don't have that. Why don't I have that? And I start asking them questions. I say, do you talk to your trees? Do you prune them? Do you tend to them? Do you fertilize them? The answer is no, no, and no. So there's also this concept where people think they can just plant a tree, walk away from it for years, and that one day they're just going to turn around, there's going to be fruit there. I'm sorry to break the news to people. That's not how energetics and frequency works. And I can see that because planting trees at the exact same time in the exact same geographical region, I don't know. Yeah. There's a reason why my trees
most definitely
popping off and theirs aren't. And I'm not saying this to say that I'm better or they're wrong. It's more just to bring an awareness to like, how are you showing up to the table? There's an expectation that you have that you want nature to provide, but you are not willing to be part of that reciprocal loop. So she is gonna not, you know what I mean? Like it's not gonna work. So it's the same thing, like going back to the energetics of money and abundance. It's like, what are you actively doing to participate in this cycle of giving and receiving, the loop of reciprocity that I like to call, because you give Mother Nature a little bit and she will give you abundance.
Yeah.
But if you give her nothing and you're only wanting to extract, she will not play that game. And I've seen it firsthand. So it's just like my invitation there for people is like, just evaluate, like, are you going to that goal or that opportunity or that vision that you have with an extractive mindset? If you are, I invite you to reflect on how you can make it a regenerative one and how you can participate in a reciprocal exchange and see and watch how things shift and are different. Because anyone who's living in scarcity and extraction, expecting to experience abundance, now that's a fantasy.
Yeah. And our culture has definitely gone that way.
Oh, 100%.
Right? It's take, extract, extract, extract. Don't care about the cost. And again, it's part of the major problems I think that we're because we fight nature, right?
Oh,
The way the way our industrialized system works when it comes to our food production in general is one of fighting nature, trying to control every aspect of it instead of working completely in harmony with it and letting it do what it does best while we do what we can do best and give it the love.
Mhm.
And these problems are just perpetually getting worse and worse. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, it's time for us to really take that wake up call and make some drastic changes and quick,
Mhm. Mhm.
inspiring the next person to get on this train and work with it as well.
Yeah.
So tell me a little more about Seven Neighbors. Let's dive
Yeah.
into your business.
Yeah. So Seven Neighbors, speaking of leadership, was born. So the concept of it was born from me doing the permaculture and just sitting and observing and being like, why are we not operating off these organizational principles in nature? Why are we not operating like this in organizational structure? Like to me, it was just like such a missed opportunity. So that's where kind of the idea was sparked of like, okay, how can I infuse these principles, these practices into leadership and into corporations and organizations? Because the truth is that, like you said, like it's no surprise things aren't working. This isn't like
Yeah,
new
yeah.
information. You know what I
Give
mean?
yourself a
Like
little
things
neck
aren't
massage here.
working. Oh my god, I'm so into it. My fascial nets are so happy with you right now. They're like,
Uh,
get it. So I always have my board meetings too. Like with my team, I always have massage tools around. Like when we have an
yeah,
in-person one, and I give them, I was like, don't ask permission to get up. If you need to get up and give yourself a stretch or massage, like keep the juices flowing. So
yeah,
you're right
yeah.
on brand. You're
Uh.
right on brand. So yeah, so just finding ways to infuse these principles and methodologies within corporate structure. And the other piece of Seven Neighbors, just to speak a little bit more to the name, was taken from, well, not taken, but inspired by these starling birds that fly
Mm,
in the murmurations. The starlings that kind of fly, they don't have like that traditional V shape of birds that they
no.
fly in. They're kind of doing these like artistic kind of Cirque du Soleil like
Yeah, it's so cool.
shapes in the sky. So the starlings, my team did a bit of research on it, and the reason why they can fly like that in such like an artistic, synchronistic way is because they're in constant communication with their seven closest neighbors.
Mm,
And it was like such a beautiful example of what collaborative leadership can look like. And so moving away in terms of like in the spirit of like changing old systems and like old ways of doing it is moving away from this hierarchical model into a truly collaborative model where there's not one individual single leader, but there's multiple leaders. And if we're all in our joy and genius and we're constantly in communication, we can move in these amazing synchronistic ways towards a greater purpose together.
yeah.
And so that was the inspiration of the name and the concept of Seven Neighbors is this idea of like, let's lead with collaborative leadership. Let's shift and
I love it.
compost the outdated systems and move into truly collaborative leadership. And so that's where a little bit of like the name and the inspiration of just the philosophy was born. And
Hmm.
now taking that, combining it with the principles of permaculture and pulling these into how people are leading and how people are operating. So I work with executive teams. I like to work, if it's a larger organization, I do like to work with the executive team and then have them kind of trinkle the methodologies down from there. And because, lead by example, you know what I
Yep.
mean? And if we can start with the core group, then things will ripple out from there. So I do things like, I do one-on-one mentorship for leaders. I also do teams, like I was saying with the executives, where either they will invite me to their boardroom and I'll come on site and do some stuff with them, or it'll be virtual. And then also sometimes I'll bring them down to Costa Rica and we'll do like a immersed in nature retreat, which is kind of similar, but now we're like actually like, if I'm going to talk about my pruning example, like I'm going to take them out to one of my trees and actually teach them how to prune them and immerse them in nature so they can observe the same things that I observed and then,
Yeah.
hopefully infuse it much more, easefully. So these are the types of things that I'm doing with organizations right now, really starting with what I call the soil test, which is
Mm,
basically like a regenerative baseline assessment of like where are you at currently? Like what are the operating systems currently? What are some of the challenges? What's happening? Let's get a lay of the land. And then from there, I can then customize, depending on what their needs are, I'll then pull from some of my methodologies and customize a journey for them to address some of their, the things that are utmost priority, and then working our way from there. So it becomes a very kind of a la carte, customized approach depending on who I'm working with, because not every organization is going to be starting or struggling from the same places.
Yeah.
So everything starts with this soil test and then branches out from there into, what the regenerative opportunity is for that specific organization.
And I love how you've just weaved in the permaculture teachings that you've absorbed over the past bunch of years into your business development stuff that you're working at. It's so good. And
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah, it's just very unique, and
Yeah.
something that I think, because it's unique in that way, it's a fresh look at what leadership is and how it impacts companies, and being able to tie that into the foundational stuff with nature is extremely relevant at this time. So, I love that you've been able to do it in that way. As far as Seven Neighbors goes now, how many years have you been running that? Is it 6 years, 7 years?
It's brand new. It's just
Brand
she's just a
new.
little baby. So just over a year.
Okay.
We just celebrated our 1 year anniversary.
Oh,
So she's
congratulations.
Thank you. She's fairly new. And she's thriving though. It was, once you are in sync and collaborating with structures of nature, she'll meet you there and she'll blow wind, underneath your wings. So we're a year into it and it's been accelerating really well. And we're really excited about, what this means for the future of leadership, for the future of organizations, for how business is done, and one conversation at a time. The world is a big place. There's lots of people, and I'm also not trying to, convince everyone. I really want to work with the people who are ready to be part of the change. Like those rebellious disruptors that are sitting at the boardroom table and they're like, we're not doing this right. Like there has to be a better way. Those are I want to have a conversation with them. I'm not trying to convince the people that are still stuck in the old school ways of doing it and have no desire to change. That's not who I want to spend my time with. I want to spend my time with the next gen leaders, the rebellious disruptors, those people that know that there's a different way to do it. They're just not sure what, and they want to be a part of that change. Those are the people that we want to collaborate with and want to work with, because that's where real kind of drive and momentum can take place, is when you're working with people who want to be doing the work.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just that much more committed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what does success look like to you with your business? How do you
Mm-hmm.
know when you've really hit that target?
Yeah. So first measure of success to me is within my core team. It's like, okay, if I'm going to go and preach about permaculture principles in the boardroom and giving Mother Nature a seat at your boardroom table and mimicking these natural organizational structures, you best believe that we need to practice that within our core team first and foremost. So that's kind of one of the biggest successes for this first year, has been how embedded our values are within our company culture. And I work kind of like, I have a hybrid team where I have some that are full-time, and then I have some that are more contractors that have their own teams. Like that's how my marketing division works and my financial division works. And then, so first success to me is like the cohesiveness of our team and everyone really being in their joy and genius, and us navigating like these starlings that I'm talking about so beautifully. Innovating with difference of opinion, like conflict, we alchemize that shit literally like so quickly. So like, really, it's almost like we are our first beta test of like, is
Yeah.
this possible? Yes, it is, because we're doing it. Then seeping out from that, another successful marker for me is what that's meant for the other organizations that I'm working with. So my marketing team, her whole company now has been shifted into these methodologies, and she's been infusing them in how they operate and whether they say yes or no to working with certain people, because now they're so embedded in their values as well. And we've had lots of conversations of how that's impacted their greater team. Same thing with the financial. My CFO, she has been seeping these principles and methodology within her greater team and then rippling them out with clients that she's working. So that to me, first success is how our core team is working. Next marker of success is the people that I'm working with and how that's starting to seep through their organization, and then also getting that secondary hit of how they're working with their clients and their partners as well. So that kind of ripple effect and gathering the testimonials and the comments and the experiences of what it feels like in that way. Another marker of success for me beyond my team members are the people that I collaborate with. So whether it's a videography company that we're contracting to shoot some film or whoever, these like other contractors, is what experience are we giving them? So it's like our biggest measure of success is these are our values. This is how we're showing up. How tight is that gap? And right now our gap is like Lego blocks. It is tight and well knit. And those are like the biggest, as a startup, to me, those are the bigger markers of success than say, how much revenue we've made, because that means that we're grounded in a really solid foundation and literally like speaking, like walking the talk, doing what we're saying. Because then now going back to the frequency of things, we're resonating at this frequency of what we're trying to achieve. The next level is now going to be, really onboarding more clients and getting to those more traditional markers of like revenue. But I would say that in the first year for startup, those are some of my biggest success KPIs, if you will, is how the methodology is actually working within the teams that I've, that I collaborate with.
Yeah. Where do you see this in 10 years?
Ooh, in 10 years, I see this being like the new standing, the standard operating system for all corporations. That like this is the way that businesses run, and we literally compost hierarchical systems and extractive systems, even composting sustainability. Like this was a big piece for me at the beginning of the year. We had the opportunity to go speak at Davos, the belly of the beast. I was like, let's go bring our 7 Neighbours and Care Bear shit. As you can see, I have my Care Bear.
Yeah, I saw the Care Bear. Noticed. Yeah,
we're best cartoon ever. And I invited a group of sustainability advocates to compost the concept of sustainability, because it's, in my opinion, bullshit. It's, to me, synonymous with stagnation. Like, to sustain something means that it's staying the same. So why are we using this terminology and all of these environmental initiatives? Like, again, Mother Nature's like, I don't speak that language. I don't sustain myself, so I don't know what you guys are trying to achieve here. So for me, it's like, in 10 years, we're not using the word sustainability. We're using it when it feels appropriate, but we're not throwing it around like this greenwash term that makes people feel good about what they're, contributing to and collaborating with, because I don't want to be stagnant. I want to constantly be regenerating. Moving away out of extraction, beyond sustainability, into a truly regenerative way of living, doing, being, operating on every front of humanity. Because again, speaking to when we were at Davos, so many climate people, which I now call the climate crybabies. Climate this, climate that. And I was just like, we don't actually have a climate issue. We have a humanity issue.
Yes.
We have a humanity problem. And until we can fix and address the humanity piece of this, we will always have the other problems that come with that. So let's move away from all of this advocacy of things and sustainability goals and all of this stuff that is not driving us anywhere in a forward direction. Let's compost it. Throw it in the compost pile. Let's let that shit just like decompose. Let's take what's good, let the rest compose, alchemize into a new, and let's operate the way that our ancestors were, with pairing that with innovation and technology. Like, that's what's amazing about this, is like regenerative is not this new term, this new concept that was just like innovated and born. No, this is the way that our ancestors were born. This is how they operated. This is how they farmed. So how can we make a bridge between what was always there in our ancestral wisdom and now using innovation and technology in a very conscious way to bridge and amplify those very fundamental ways of operating as a human, race? That to me is what, in 10 years, is that there's a bridge between those two, showing the value of ancient wisdom and the brilliance of innovation and technology, and how can we harmonize the two without being extractive. I know it's
Love
possible.
it. Absolutely is. I love it. Very well articulated, thought out, big, grand vision for change, and I'm behind you 110%. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So where can people find you?
Yeah. So they can find me on the gram. I'm on the Instagram. So
Okay.
Jackie.Mirkopoulos. Also, Seven Neighbours has an Instagram page, so they can find me there. Also, both have LinkedIn. So whether you're a LinkedIn person or an Instagram person, those are definitely two spots that you can go check things out. Also, website sevenneighbours.com has a lot of the information. We're just about to launch a revamp of everything next week, so stay tuned because a lot of the information is being updated. So the website's a good spot as well. And then also want to invite people too, if you want to check out some of the philanthropic stuff that I'm doing with my sister, they can go check out our Ancestors of Tomorrow Instagram or LinkedIn page, or the website, which is ancestorsoftomorrow.org. And this was a regenerative social impact fund that me and my sister started a year ago as well, where we, really get to do more of our philanthropic branch of the work that we want to do. Again, all with the regenerative lens, focusing on people and culture, land stewardship, education, research. So that's another spot that people can go and see what we're up to. And if anyone wants to be partnering or collaborating, that they can check that out as well.
Very cool. We'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes.
Awesome.
And yeah, definitely go see what Jackie is up to. As you can tell, she is very passionate and inspired about leveling up our society, our culture, reconnecting people with nature, and really generating a new level of leadership that is built around and harmonized with what nature's brilliance is all about. Jackie, it's been awesome having you on the show today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
Yeah, it was. I love learning about your story. Where this all came from, how you've got to today, the transition into living in Costa Rica. Definitely love that country. It's a beautiful place, and you're very fortunate to be there and doing really what you love to the core. You can see the glow, the energy is radiating from you as you talk about this stuff. So you can tell you're in alignment.
Yes. Well, thank you, and please come and visit. Open invitation for you, Matt, to come and visit, and we
All
can sit
right,
under
kind of
one of
a
my fruit trees and eat some
yes,
fresh fruit.
yes. Well, invitation accepted. Thank you.
Awesome. All
Uh,
right.
wishing you an
Thank you, everyone,
amazing
for
day, and
listening. Thank you for having me,
you're
and
very welcome.
blessings.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another incredible episode of Seeds of Abundance. We look forward to seeing you again soon and wishing you an amazing day. Show is officially over.